Sports Team presents your Southern Tier Kickoff.
What's up? What's going on? Welcome in and good morning once again, and thank you for starting your Saturday off with us here at the Southern Tier Kickoff desk. As always, I am Zach Grady. Joining me, Michael Villegas and Keith. Kyle Spizak. We got too many K's at this desk between Keith out in the field.
Up.
I do. And we're going to get Keith in a little bit. Keith Savage is going to be joining us at live from Cornell, the 130th Trustees Cup going on. But, gentlemen, we got to start with the big boys. We got to start with Syracuse. We got to start with Penn State. And we got to start with Penn State as they are looking to bounce back. They lost their first game of the season last week against Ohio State, a 20-13 L in Happy Valley. And one that people say maybe if the whiteout game being hosted this week against Washington would have been last week, it could have made a difference. So, Kyle, is that the case? Could they have made a difference last week?
I mean, yeah, Penn State's looking to bounce back this week after a crushing loss to Ohio State for the 8th year in a row last week. Was that a big noon game? Yes. Should it have been? Probably not. But that loss put Penn State at 1-22 against top 5 teams since the year 2000. Yikes. Last week saw Penn State defense that severely underperformed, apart from Zion Tracy pick 6 and a pair of sacks from Abdul Carter. Apart from that, the defense was getting torn apart, but the offense wasn't much better, not being able to get anything going, only putting up 2 field goals in the entire game. Ohio State shut down the run and pass game for the Nittany Lions, only putting up 150 yards through the air and 120 on the ground. This week, Drew Aller should be healthier than he was last week, which is a good sign for Penn State. But now they find themselves in a situation where if you drop a game the rest of the season, there's a good chance that your CFP hopes and dreams will disappear. Penn State head coach James Franklin said earlier this week that the team needs to focus on getting ready for Washington this week instead of looking ahead to the rest of the season.
I think the most important thing for us is how do we practice on Tuesday and how do we practice on Wednesday, and I thought those practices were good. I think the coaches have been good. Most importantly, we got to get better this week and find a way to beat Washington. We do those things over the next couple weeks, then all the things that we want to do are still in front of us.
And the keys to the game for Penn State this week will be, first of all, actually put up some points on offense. You're never going to win only scoring 3 field goals offensively. Second, last week, Ohio State had far too many explosive 20-plus yard plays. You can't let that happen again this week. You need to tighten up the defense. Lastly, the receiving core has to create separation between them and defensive backs. Aller had to run on a bum knee far too much against Ohio State, and there was little explosive plays for Penn State.
This is something, Kyle, that we've been talking about all season, keeping that offense going. It's been hot and cold. It's like a Katy Perry song, hit or miss. You know, one week they're scoring a ton of points. The next week they're beating Ohio by, I think, 2 points, 3 points. You know, they've had some trouble with MAC teams. That inconsistency, you mentioned the college football playoffs, and we're going to get into that in just a little bit as well as we break down the bracket. That inconsistency, is that going to be an issue as they get into these last couple of weeks? And I don't know, maybe have a shot at Illinois or at the Indiana championship game?
I mean, yeah, the inconsistency is going to be something you really have to watch out for if you're Penn State. I mean, just bad play calling, honestly, last week from Franklin. I mentioned last week they had to use Beau Pribula in that game, and I think he touched the ball twice the entire game. That's not what you have to do, especially when Aller's on a bum knee. You can't do that. And like you mentioned, the inconsistency. 1 week, running backs do fantastic. Next week, you see Kaytron Allen get a total of 30 yards. That's not sustainable. The wide receivers, there hasn't been a standout receiver for Penn State all year. It's one game somebody plays good, and then the next week nobody plays good. So you have to figure out something consistent.
Mike, can James Franklin do it? This has been his knock. I mean, again, he got a chance to make the CFP this year, but it won't be with the big win. Can they do it?
I've always liked James Franklin. I always thought that he was a good coach, but it's just the inconsistency for me, especially against big-time programs. When it's your time to shine against an Ohio State and really put your team on the map, I think he kind of crumbles in those moments, which is a bummer.
Not kind of. I think we lead 1-10 or 1-11 at this point in time in top 10 college football games. So we still have a pick to make, though, in this game. We got Washington versus Penn State. Washington, a 13-point dog on the road in Happy Valley for the whiteout game. I'm going to go ahead and take the points. like I said, inconsistency. We've been talking about it for a while now here at the top of the show. They're not going to score enough points. I think it'll be close. They'll win, but I think it'll be close.
I mean, I have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they are going to bounce back from a week like last week. They have to. They have no choice. If they want that college football playoff position, they have to perform extremely well the rest of the year. It is going to be a whiteout crowd. That will give them a little bit of a boost. Not much. I mean, last week should have been the whiteout game, so the crowd's not going to be as into it as they were last week, and when you saw how that turned out for the offense. But I think that you have guys like Aller that understand this is do or die now, and they have to make that step up. I think they'll cover the spread here.
Michael, what do you think?
I'm taking Penn State. It's minus 13. I agree that it'll be a little bit of a bounce-back game. I always think that, and it always comes back to haunt me. But I think against a Washington team, I think James Franklin gets them in order. It's still the number 6 team in the country, so I'm taking Penn State.
All right, and like I said, we are going to talk a little bit more about Penn State's chances in the college football playoffs when we break those down at the end of the show. But breaking down the defense last week for Virginia Tech was the Syracuse offense as they stormed back to get a big win and cement maybe the start of the Fran Brown era for real in the 305s down in Miami, where the Binghamton Bearcats are. So make sure you tune in at 10 and 11 because we'll have highlights of Binghamton basketball as well. But Michael, what's Syracuse got on the tap today?
Yeah, the Syracuse Orange are shipping off to Boston to face the Eagles for their 4th straight ACC matchup. The Orange is coming off a huge 38-31 overtime win over Virginia Tech last week. Syracuse scored 21 straight points in the 3rd quarter to overcome an 18-point deficit to force an overtime where a 9-yard rushing touchdown by LaQuint Allen sealed the win for the Orange. Allen ended the day with 21 rushing attempts for 121 yards, along with 5 catches for 37 yards for 158 all-purpose yards. Kyle McCord went 24 for 35 for 280 and 2 touchdowns with 1 interception. Fadil Diggs and Marlon Wax together had 2 sacks and 16 total tackles. Here's Coach Fran Brown ahead of their game with Boston College Eagles.
They got a real good football coach, Bill O'Brien, one of the better coaches in the country. He's coached at every level. He's done a good job, Super Bowls. I mean, his resume speaks for itself. I think his staff, Coach Will Lawings, who he has as the offensive coordinator, Tim Lewis, and then Matt Thurin. They got real good. This offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, special teams. When we look at Thomas, I think their quarterback is extremely dynamic. So we have our hands full getting to go against a guy like him. He's like a little human joystick. You know, his kid can really play football.
And that brings us to our keys of the game for the Syracuse as they head to Boston College. First one, don't get out-coached by Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien has elevated that Boston College program and has more experience than rookie head coach Fran Brown. Syracuse wants to win. Fran Brown can't get out-coached. What does that mean? Managing the clock well, playing situational football, capitalizing on mistakes, whether that's penalties or turnovers. The second key, feed LaQuint Allen. Syracuse came back to beat Virginia Tech in overtime, feeding Allen. Coach Fran Brown said after the overtime win, it's LaQuint Allen time. He went 60 minutes, and they need 60 minutes from him this game. Getting LaQuint Allen involved in the run game as well as the pass game benefits this offense, opens things up for Kyle McCord. Get the ball into your best players' hands. Third key, get Fadil Diggs going early. It's hard to get that done on the defensive side of the ball. I know that, but with linebacker Marlon Wax getting healthier and stronger each week opens things up for Diggs. Move him around, get him coming off the edge, have him move back to the second level, have him spy the quarterback. Find whatever works to get Diggs going. Whenever he's hot, this defense flows and follows his lead. Lastly, try to slow down Thomas Castellanos. Coach Fran Brown said it. He's a human joystick. He reminds a little bit of Kyler Murray. He's small, listed at 5'9", but he makes good decisions. Has 17 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. This season, he's rushed 101 yards in the last 2 games. Syracuse needs to keep him in the pocket and try to contain him.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
that's a lot. That's a lot for them to be able to do.
That's asking a lot.
Yeah, that's asking a lot. So, listen, Syracuse, we talked about it last week. This has to be a statement game, a defining game for the Fran Brown era. There was a lot of talk on this desk about how it's the same old Syracuse. And if we look at the picks, I'm not sure how many of us got a W last week. That being said, Fran Brown made a statement. Fran Brown made a statement, that team made a statement. And what amazes me most about this is that I went to this game last year between Boston College and Syracuse, and it had to be one of the most boring college football games in the history of college football. It was a bad game. There wasn't a lot of offense, and neither of the philosophies were very offensively minded. To see where these two teams have come just a year later is miraculous. So let's get right into the picks with this one. I am going to take Cuse. This is just a 1-point game, so it's basically a pick 'em. I'll take Cuse. I'll take the points. Go Orange.
And bouncing off what you said, last year, one of the most boring games. To be fair, Dane Villari was quarterback for Syracuse at that point in time. But, I mean, McCord, a lot better of an offensive quarterback than, well, anyone Syracuse has had since Eric Dungy in 2017. Boston College, they had that hype in the beginning of the year because they beat Florida State. That turned out to just be Florida State's a horrible football team. There was really nothing around that one. So I'm going to take Syracuse in this one. I don't think they'll absolutely blow the doors off of them, but I think that they will cover the spread.
I agree. I'm taking Syracuse. It's, like you said, a -1 game, so it's really a pick 'em. But I think Syracuse, we say it every week, like you mentioned, that it's a Fran Brown prove it game, prove it game, prove it game. And I mean, that's the way it's going to be your rookie year. I think against Bill O'Brien, he's going to have to show, he can't show any of his rookie mistakes against an experienced veteran head coach in Bill O'Brien, who has a good Boston College team. So I'm excited to see.
I really don't know how much more Fran Brown has to prove. I mean, since getting Kyle McCord in the door and this whole season, he's answered most of the questions. And again, minus a last-second Stanford field goal, they're right in it and maybe in a chance at, the college football playoff, which we're going to talk about as we get into the rest of the day. But real quick, we're going to go around the southern tier before we get out of here. Cortland Red Dragons are taking on Brockport. That game at 1 p.m. The last game before next week, and the Cortica Cup. A couple hours south, Eastwick hosting Alfred Saxton, 1 p.m. in Wright Stadium. Ithaca taking on St. Lawrence, 1 p.m. at Butterfield Stadium. And the Colgate Raiders will host Lafayette, 1 p.m. at Andy Kerr Stadium. That in Hamilton. A lot of action taking on place across New York.